everybody, me Joe with Balsa USA. So welcome to episode 3 of the live on-air Newport 1716 scale Balsa USA build. Don't forget, if you swing over to balsausa.com and you want to get your very own Newport 17 to follow along with us on the build, enter in coupon code N17 BILD, all caps, no spaces, and you will get 10% off of your very own kit so you can build right along with us. So welcome to the show, Mr. Chuck and Mr. Ronnie. How are we doing?
We're doing good. How are you, bud?
Fantastic. So as you guys know, last week we left off on step 5 in the manual, and this week we're going to continue on. We're going to continue on to the fuselage, and I believe the steps start back over on assembling a fuselage, and we're going to try to get through 1 through 6 today. So we're going to do things a little bit differently, just so you guys that are jumping in now will know. What we've done is we've changed it up a bit because I actually have built ahead. We realized last week it's a little tough for me to keep up with the build live on air. So what I've done is I've added this other camera, and I've already got mine built. So as we talk about the build, I will be able to zoom in and pan around on the stuff that we're talking about live while we're building. This is going to give you guys an opportunity to get a little bit closer up look. And also we've got some pictures that I took during my portion of it. So that will be all good. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get this thing rolling.
All right, guys. Well, for everybody out there building along with us, I hope you guys have jumped in, got the kids, and have jumped in and got to our part where we're at. But if not, you can always go back to our YouTube channel and check out where we started at and catch up then. And we encourage everybody to read ahead, look at the manual, and follow along with us. So, like Joe said, we left off at step 5. Step 6 and 7 is basically prepping the two sides. A few sides that we built in the previous video, and mount it and get ready for the side doublers. And what's the key here on the side doublers, and this is where I kind of jumped just a little bit ahead, is that we make a right and a left pattern. All right. So what that left and right pattern does is so that when we put these on the table, that those doublers are on the inside of the fuselage. So when we put them down on the table, they're on the inside there. So that's very key. On step 6 in the manual, it talks about pinning the two sides together and just truing them all up. So make sure they're perfectly square. I've already done that. Then we add the doublers. This is where I changed up just slightly. It says to add the doublers in step 7 and then add the blind nuts. I did the blind nuts first on the doublers before I glued them to the fuselage side. Just seemed a little bit more logical. A little bit better to handle that way, and so that once I got these glued on, trued up and straight, it was just easier to do. And another just little quick tip was when I did glue those doubler sides on, I actually put it to the table and I either weighted them down with magazines or some lead ingots that I have here, just to keep things nice and flat and tight while the glue sets up. Now, you can use thick CA is recommended. If you're a little nervous, that's still a little bit too much for you. On the thick CA, meaning maybe it's just a little bit too quick, use a nice wood glue like a tight bond or something like that, and get it in, and that gives you a little bit more working time while everything gets set up and dry. So that being said, I'm going to lay these just off to the side for a little bit, because then what we're going to do is we're going to start adding some of our cross members. We're prepping the fuselage aft for the cross members. So what I did is, like Joe's showing up the pictures here, just like it says in the book, in the manual, lay over the plans, and you'll see a tick mark on the top side and a reference on the bottom, and cut that to size. And something I also did, and once I made these, I'm sorry, I'll back up here. Once I did all those cuts on the first ones, I made a carbon copy. All right, so now it's already done. So it's also going to ensure that my tops and bottoms are square and true. Now, one thing I did do, and it doesn't say in the manual, is I've drawn center lines on all my bulkheads and references. All right, I even did it on the top crutch that we've now have pinned to the board. Okay, so and basically what that does, it gives me a nice reference eyeball when I'm putting these things in place, that everything just falls right in place and right down the line. All right, so I'm going to start pinning in my first my first cross joiner here.
So one of the things to look for on this, guys, when you're checking this out, is you can see this little tick mark right here on the top. So if you follow that, when you cut your pieces, they will be to the correct size. That's what those tick marks are for right there.
Yep.
Okay. And also, I've got this picture on here so you can see I did this on purpose. Make sure you don't have them laying flat. Those go up on their side. See here, this one's up on its side, the one on the left, and the other two are on the side. They don't go on their side. They go, or I'm sorry, they don't go flat. They go on their side like those. You can see those there. Those are up on their side.
And a good way to check in which direction that those mounted on, kind of lay one against the side of the fuse, and it should match the stick height on the side of the fuse. For example, and what Joe's talking about is these are basically going to go something like that. If he lays them on the 3/16 wide part, it won't match this top long run, and that's what he's talking about. He wants that to go like that, so it matches the height of that long run. Make sense? All right, I just gotta put in the last of this.
While Chuck's doing that, we'll talk about this here. So during my process, I pulled a little bit of a bonehead and didn't get my plywood out of the carrier very good, and ended up, as you can see here, this crack that runs the length of that piece there on the crutch. I have a quick video that I put up on the Facebook page showing how to repair that. Basically, what happened is with these die cut parts, you get different densities in this wood. Even a sheet can have different densities across it. And when I broke them out of their carriers from the dies, this entire side came out. So to make sure that you keep a nice and solid piece, you can actually put some thick CA down there, find the piece and line the piece up, and then sand it flat, and it's just like it never happened. Now, on that video I talked about, you can still see on here, you can see the area where I glued it. So like right there, you can see that piece. And if I pull down here, you can see this piece. If this is going to be exposed wood, you can go in here with some wood filler and fill that in and sand it, and you will never tell that you broke that piece of the plywood out. That's just a little quick tip on those.
And guys, on those die cut sheets, there's a couple ways you can get those parts out a little bit cleaner. Is you can actually retrace the cuts with an X-Acto knife, and that just kind of frees them up a little bit. Or what you can do is flip it on the other side, which you'll start seeing the faint side of the die cut. Take some 80 grit sandpaper and do a couple of swipes, and that'll make those other parts, they'll make that just a little bit lighter, make those cuts reveal themselves, and should fall out a little bit cleaner.
Yep, and that's what I forgot to do on those. I was working down in the basement. I was working on about 100 things at the same time, and I forgot to run my razor blade down that piece, and that's what happened.
Absolutely, and it's easy. It's easy to do. Well, first of all, you get the box open, you get excited, you want to start building, right? And we just get going. So back here on my build, Ronnie, first of all, how you doing out there, Ron?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little behind, so I just got my side doublers glued on. But one thing to mention with what Chuck's working on with the cross pieces, normally when I do mine, I tend to make both the top and bottom at the same time. Make two at a time, so you know that they're exactly the same length and you don't get any twist in your fuselage.
Perfect.
That's a good tip, Ronnie. One of the things I noticed on Ronnie's builds, and all of us kind of got there, but Ronnie described it very well the other night on air, where he talked about building both pieces, both sides at the same time. And when he had his done, he was an exact match all the way across. That's what you're looking for. Any difference you have between one side of the fuselage and the other, when you go to start gluing all this stuff in, you're going to wind up twisting the airframe because it's going to have weaker and stronger points from one side to the other. And you want to try to avoid that as much as you possibly can. I want to welcome everybody into the live chat. We've got lots of folks showing up. I see Matt Morley, Mike Barbie, Rusty Poplamiller. I'm not getting that right, so I apologize. Brian Peterson, Gary Ballard, Peter Ashton. Thanks for showing up, guys. We really, really appreciate you guys being here.
Absolutely. Welcome, everyone.
So we have a question
Okay.
that popped up. David wants to know, how are we going to power these N17s? I believe they are all going to be electric, if I'm not mistaken.
That's where I'm going. I'll be doing electric on mine. Ronnie has talked about the same thing, and we've exchanged some text messages back and forth on what kind of power systems. And I think once we get them nailed down, maybe Joe, we'll put a kind of a list of components out there on
We've already
equipment
got
that
one.
we're going to be using. Nice.
Oh, what you're going to be using. Yeah, we actually already got it
Yep.
set up. So on mine, I'm actually going to be setting it up electric. And I just did the electric conversion. If you check out the YouTube channel, there's a video on there called Electric Conversions, and you can build it the same way. Don't forget, over at bossusa.com, if you're planning on ordering this using coupon code N17, all caps, no spaces, to get your 10% off, to add that 1/6 scale electric conversion kit. It's going to make it way easier to get your electric conversions done. Everything's set up so that you can adjust for whatever size motor that you want. On mine, I'm actually going to run a Rimfire 32 Castle 75 amp ESC, and I'm going to run it on 2 3S 5200 packs, one at a time. So if you look at that video we have over on electric conversions, I actually show how to install that inside the crutch. It'll install from underneath, and those 5200 batteries fit in there perfectly. And then because of the weight that I'll need, I'm going to use both packs and only fly them one pack at a time. So I'll get 2 flights of about 8 to 12 minutes per battery change.
So what you'll do, though, is you'll keep both batteries in there, only utilize one, and ready to fly again, you'll just plug to the not unused battery, correct?
Yes, sir.
Good idea. Good idea.
Yep, and actually nice. It's going to work out good. I've got a couple other setups. If you check out that video over on the YouTube channel, it's electric conversions. I will be posting the video link in the show notes after the show's aired, but you can go in there and check out all the different options, because I've actually now I only have one left of the 1/6 scales that need to be converted to electric. So,
oh, fantastic.
All right, okay. Let's move on in the build.
Just catching back up. All right. While Joe was talking, I jumped up a little bit here. I've got the aft end cross members in place that we just discussed, how the orientation of them, how it's how critical it is to the tail component. I've also glued in the top crutch. One thing I want to let you know, in the manual on the top crutch, it does not show, there's a couple of notch outs. Oh, you probably can't see them well in my video, but maybe Joe can zoom in on his. There's a couple of notch cutouts for the cabane struts to go through. On the photo in the manual, it does not show those cutouts. Just reference, guys. We've noted it, and we'll be adding it to, we'll be making changes to the catalog and future kits. Okay, so I got the top crutch glued, pinned down. And once again, like I did with my formers, guys, I ran a center line down that top crutch. Oh, right there, that Joe's showing, right there at the upper left-hand side, those 2 cutouts. That is correct, and it does show it on the plans, but on the manual, those cutouts are not there on the photograph on photo 9. So don't freak out about that. But anyways, I got my top crutch down. I have it weighted down and pinned down, but also I do have a center line that is a reference to the plan. And that's just me. That's just, you know, what I do. That's more of a mental thing for me. All right, top crutch glued, pinned down. All my cross members pinned down. Nothing's glued yet, guys. I just set my this would actually be the right side of the fuselage. I already got that set in place, and I pinned it down. Nothing's glued, and I'm just using my handy dandy little machinist triangles that I bought at Menards, and I just have it laying in place. And everything's flat on the board. Everything looks good. At this point, I'm gonna tack glue just a couple of spots in there, and all that's doing is just keying it in place while I do the rest. All right, there we go. All right, we're starting to build an airplane here, guys.
What I wanted to point out, and Chuck talked about in his presentation there, is make sure at this point you're going to just tack glue stuff. You're just going to put, like Chuck was talking about, you're just going to put a little weld spot on there just to hold everything together. You want to wait to go in and glue everything good until you have the complete fuselage completed and make sure that you have no twists and everything is straight. Then you can go back in and start gluing it all together so it's all nice.
And absolutely, and it's just, you know, like we did when we built the fuselage sides, we just kind of spot welded or spot glued everything together with our Balsa USA thin, And that was just to get it together and off the board. Then once we had it off the board, we went and re-glued every particular joint in there to make it nice and strong and tight. So it's kind of the same thing we're doing here with the fuselage. Everything will be kind of spot glued together until we get it off the board, make sure it's all true and square, and then we go in there and re-glue it. A little funny story, while I was building our third scale DR1, I had the whole horizontal built, which is about the size of a fuselage on this. Same way, I had it all tacked together and I dropped it. And it all came apart like a puzzle. The good news is nothing literally broke. It just all came apart. And I sat on the floor and just laughed. Because it just sat down, but everything was all apart by about an eighth of an inch, but there was this perfect horizontal stab and all perfect little pieces. Put it back on the board. 5 minutes later, I had it off the board and re-glued. This time I didn't drop it, and we're flying away with it. So
it happens a lot. So something I wanted to zoom in and show you here. Chuck's got one of his fuselage sides up, and it's going to be very important. You can see what I've done in this picture as I've went in and I've pinned my smaller steel ruler to the table. So you can see I've made it. There's a pin here. There's a pin on both sides, on both ends. So this can't move. And then what you want to do is you want to put your fuse crutch right up against that so that when you put your fuselage sides up, you're square. You want to make sure that you do this step. Don't forget to do that when you get ready to start putting your fuse sides on. And that way everything will go together nice and easy.
All right. Stay right there, Joe, on that pick, because I had to jump out of screen to pin to the other side here, but I do want to show the guys what I'm doing here in a minute. And it's from my screen angle that we're showing. This will probably show a little bit better. Okay, Joe, you can go ahead and jump back in. All right, what I've done here is I've added my second side, not glued yet. I have my triangles. You notice my pins I have in place down in just in a couple spots, and that's just to keep it flat on the board. I'm going to check the tail here. Everything's good. Everything's nice and tight. I'm butted at the front, just like Joe talked about in that ruler. I'll add a couple little spot welds of CA, and I'm actually using thick on this only because it's plywood to plywood or poplar to poplar, and it gives it a little bit more time to set up and soak in. So everything's looking real good there. Everything's touching the board. We're good. Ronnie, how you doing?
Doing good right now. I'm just cutting my cross braces right for the fuselage.
Awesome. So at this point, guys, we are right around step 5. All right. Everything's tack glued in, squared up. We have our lower cross members in. And now we can start adding F3 and F4. One note on F4, there is a top and a bottom. All right. F2, there is no difference. F3, there is, and we'll talk really quickly about that. F3 has the locating holes for the dowels. So what the blower wing keys into. Now on your kit, these are punch marks, and it does say to drill those out with a 1/4 inch drill. I suggest you start with like a 1/8 inch drill or something a little bit smaller. Start that pinhole, go up a size, and then finish with the 1/4 inch. Just makes a nice cleaner cut or a nice cleaner drill. And another thing that I do that helps over the lifespan of the airplane, once those holes are good and you have them sized, I take a little bit of thin CA. Why it's in my hand here, it's easier to do it this way. And I'm just wicking in a little bit of thin CA in there. And what that does, that just hardens those holes. So over time and duration of the airplane, it just, because it's an access point or a wear point, I'll put it that way. And it just makes that area stay nice, tighter and fit and cleaner, and just preserves the lifespan of your airplane.
I'll give you guys a quick, like regular woodworking tip. When you get ready to drill those holes, I'm actually fortunate enough that I have a small tabletop drill press over here that I use for that. But even if you're going to use a hand drill, use the bubble on the back, because right on the back of the drill, in most drills today, there's a little bubble level. Get that bubble level good, or use a square if you have to, if yours doesn't have a bubble level on it. And if you take that and put it on like a block of wood, I've got a block of 2x4 over here that I use all the time to lay the piece on. And if you drill through the piece while it's sitting on another block of wood, you won't get blowout on the back. It'll take care of all that. You won't have that on the back side.
All right. So I've got F2 here that I'm just going to lay in place. And boy, everything's just lining right up. That's just laid in place at the moment. Notice that on F2, it sits right behind that. There's a notch out you'll see, and that's for a landing gear rail mount. It sits right there, right next to it. So that landing rail mount will actually butt upright against F2, so that makes a nice tight bond right there. So I'll use my square. Go ahead.
One of the things that Chuck did that is a good idea, and I was doing other things that, honestly, and I can't remember if he said, is he marked his fuse crutch with lines previous to putting any of his formers in, so that he could actually see on the fuse crutch where each former is placed, which that's a real good idea.
It's more of a mental thing for me, Joe. It's kind of like on a puzzle and just lining things up. And so I like it. It works well. And it also proves to me as I'm building along here that I still got things straight and square.
Yeah, no, that's a great tip, because then you can see it. Because I'll be honest with you, when you set your fuse crutch down, unless you're following the instructions, and this is one of the things where Chuck talks about a lot, and Ronnie and I both have talked about, make sure you read through that instructions. So read through the section that you're getting ready to do. And if you look in your manuals, if you're building along with it, it actually tells you where each former goes. So it tells you right on here, it says, make sure former 2 is flush with the back of the openings in the upper plywood crutch so the cabane struts won't interfere. So it tells you exactly where those pieces go. But when you lay your fuse crutch down on the fuselage plans, you can't see those lines. So transferring those lines over to the fuse crutch is actually a great idea. We had a question come up from RC Stinger. How do you work out the plane is a 1/6 scale? So how that's done is we take the 3 view drawings of the full scale airplane and scale them down to 1/6 the size. Now, I will say it is a rough estimate. It's not 100% accurate to 1/6 scale. 1/6 scale is just a close measurement to where these kits are made according to their size and according to the difference between them and the full scale airplane.
And sometimes those changes that Joe is talking about is due to engine sizes, radio equipment, how things fit. So the fuselage may be a little bit wider, the nose be a little bit longer, things like that, so that we can achieve a proper balance. You have to understand that lots of times when these aircrafts were designed, even all the way up through World War II, they had big radial engines out front, which that was so much weight there. Well, our model airplane engines in mass have nowhere near comparison to that in size. So we take some, liberties to help do that. Plus, get knuckleheads like me with big hands to get inside these airframes.
Well, and the other thing is a lot of guys will critique us based on, hey, that part of that airplane's not scale. Ronnie's cheating. I hear him using a sander. Ronnie's cheating, ladies and gentlemen. So basically what we do when we design an airframe is we design an airframe based on we'll make changes on the airframe based on how it will fly as a model. So there might be a little bit more dehedral in the wing. There might be a little bit different of a wing chord. There might be a little bit difference in the wing ribs and how the wing is shaped. And those changes are made during design of a model to make that an easier flying model. Because I got news for you. If we took the Fokker triplane and took it and directly made a 100% scale to scale size triplane, it's only going to last you about halfway through your maiden, because that thing is going to be so squirrely to fly as a model aircraft that you'd never get it off the ground. And keep in mind, if you do a little bit of history, you'll find that they actually killed more pilots training on DR1s than they actually killed flying in the war. So that says something about what they did back then. So any of those changes you see in models are based on the fact that we've got to produce a model that people are going to be happy with and that they're going to actually be able to fly.
And success, and also stress-free flying.
Yeah.
All right, I've got bulkhead F2 tack glued in place. Actually, I do need to add just a click right here.
So while he's doing that, I will flip over to the Newport cam here and show you where he's working. You can see right here, this is the F2 former. I've got everything squared up. Now these, I always talk about these in my videos. These are 1, 2, 3 blocks, and these are great for this step. You can use a regular square, but you can also, if you can grab them, you can get these on Amazon. You can get them at machining shops. These 1, 2, 3 blocks are perfect for stuff like this because they've got enough weight to them that they're going to hold everything in place while you do your work on your aircraft. So you really want to make sure, and as you can see, as you look down this, it is completely square with the crutch, and that's what you want. This is a critical spot. You can see here, I have to get my big meat hooks out of the way. This is perfectly square right here. And it's the same thing on this other side. You got to really pay attention up here because next week when we cover the next video, we're going to be covering how to install the firewall. And you want to make sure everything is going to be square as you move forward.
Perfect.
Wes says, do we come back and use epoxy? Okay, so this is a preference thing, West. There's a lot of folks out there that swear by wood glue. There's a lot of folks out there that swear by CA. There's a lot of folks out there that swear by epoxy. So this is what I do. I build primarily with thin CA. The reason I build primarily with thin CA is because thin CA wicks into the pieces of wood and makes a stronger bond. Any of the other glues that you use, and I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with them because there's a lot of people that use them and they work great. But the problem that I see with wood glues are that wood glues are primarily a surface glue. Okay, they do work. They do wick a little bit into the wood, and they create a tight bond, and a tight bond, no pun intended. They create a tight bond, and the wood stays together, but it's still just a surface glue. CA, on the other hand, wicks in. That thin CA is going to wick into that wood and create what I think is a stronger bond. And it's also, for me, it's important to build just a little bit quicker sometimes. And it builds a lot quicker. You can use wood glue or aliphatic resin. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't really use that. And to answer your question directly on epoxy, the only thing that I really use epoxy for is around motor mounts, so the firewall, and hinging. That's it. I don't put much epoxy in my airplanes.
Well, also, Joe, an epoxy, if used incorrectly, can add weight real quick.
Oh, yes. Yeah, and you'll find Wes on most of these models, especially with our models, the World War I style models, you don't need a ton of strength. You're not going to be doing outside loops. You're not going to be doing, snap hook rolls with no names and all that stuff on the backside. You just not.
Okay. While Joe was talking and answering Wes's questions, I was just doing some trial fits of F4. I actually jumped ahead on F4 a little bit. I was just obviously go F2, F3, and F4. I went ahead and I did F4 because that's going to stabilize this part of the aircraft just a little bit better, and that way I can jump in there and get to F3, which will be a real easy install then. So I'm just test fitting all my parts and my pieces and see where I'm at, and everything's looking spot on. I like it when that happens. And once again, I'm using my little machinist squares, which is on me to line everything up. Once again, all my tick marks are lining up right on. I'm liking that. That's good. All right. Fantastic. All right, once that's in place, I'm gonna jump in and I'm gonna tack glue those in place just like everything else, and we're gonna be in good shape.
How we doing over there, Ronnie?
Doing pretty good. Like Chuck said, I'm I'm working on F2 right now. I'm just a little bit behind where he is.
That's okay. We built ahead. That was the whole.
That was the whole idea. I'm just doing a little fine tuning on some notches here. And once again, guys, this is just balsa wood. If you don't like the part, if you don't like the way it fits, get your little sanding tools out that we discussed about in episode 1, and just tweak on it. But for the most part, there's very little tweaking involved. But it is balsa, and that's also called part of the hobby. So, and that's part of the hobby I actually enjoy. So, I'm just gonna make nice tight joints here and everything, and just a little bit more right there on that edge, and I think I'll be good to go.
One of the things I wanted to point out here is if you look right now at this build picture, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to also throw up this one. You can see, you know, this is one of the things we talked about when we first got started. You can see that all three of us are using different tools and equipment
To get the same result.
Don't have to have the exact same stuff. If what you have is a neon green plastic square, then use it. If what you have is 1, 2, 3 blocks, use it. You know, use what you got. That's the whole point, is you don't have to have a lot to get started on this. The other thing I wanted to kind of point out, and this so far, and I don't know if the other two guys have experienced this much on this particular model, but you always want to make sure to, number one, you want to build to the wood, not to the plans. The plans are going to shift. The plans are more apt to shift due to heat, humidity, climate changes than the actual wood is. So if you're laying down a piece of wood, now it doesn't get too bad on the 1/6 scale size, but as you move up in size, that becomes apparent because the plans are bigger and it gives them a lot more opportunity to shrink. But always make sure that you build to the wood, not to the plans. And for these models, we try to do our best to make sure that everything fits and everything is right. But if you ever run into anything that doesn't, you can modify it. It's easy to do. Sand a little bit here, cut a little bit there. It's all good to go. And then you can also contact us if there's an issue, and we will correct it.
Absolutely. And you have to understand, like Joe's saying, the plans are paper. Paper is wood, and it's a growing, living, breathing. You know, your airplane will actually expand and contract as the temperature of the day when you go out flying. You ever notice why you sometimes during the day you have to retrim your airplane a little bit, maybe a click or here or there? That airplane's growing and expanding. It's moving on you. All right. So the plans, they're doing the same thing. What I do when I first get a set of plans, not so much in the 6 scale, because like Joe did say, it's a smaller aircraft. When I do start doing the bigger ones, I'll actually start taking measurements on the plan. And you'll notice on some plans, they'll actually expand or contract depending on length, width of the paper, and that kind of thing. So I just use it as a reference. So I'll redraw my own center line, and I'll redraw my own tick marks, and just use it as a common base point to draw on, and just see how much that plan is moving. Because what you don't want to do is end up having one wingtip, you know, say 3/16 of an inch longer or 1/4 of an inch longer on the other side. Because when you're trying to square up that airplane, when you mount that wing on, you're taking a measurement from the wingtip to the tail, you'll never get that number right, and you'll be baffled. Why? I'm centered, I'm on the center line, everything's good. Well, one wing panel can be slightly off. Now, if you know that going in, that is not going to affect any of the flying characteristics of the aircraft at all. It'll fly just fine. Just one of those things that might drive you nuts when you're trying to square some things off. Learn it from me. I've learned the hard way. Maybe you don't have to. So, all right, I've got F4 here tacked in place, looking pretty good. I'm just going to let that settle a bit more. By this time, Ronnie should be pretty close to where I'm at.
Yeah, if you're working, what are you on, your F4?
I put F4 in, and I skipped F3 only because now I'm building more of a box between F2 and F4, and I'll be able to slide F3 right on in.
Ronnie looks like he's stacking in F2 right now.
Right. Yeah, I'm stacking in F2 right now.
So one of the things I wanted to point out while the guys are building is if you swing over to, and I'm going to attempt to bring this up so you can actually see. If you go over to our YouTube channel, There are tons of how-to videos. There's a couple of different series on here. There's, of course, the Shop Time Live videos. There's the Shop Time Live 1/6 scale Newport build. There's the Leading Edge series. There's the Beginner Build series, how-to videos, product demos, and all that stuff, event promo videos and all that stuff. It's all on here. So anytime you have anything that you want to check out, you just swing over to the Balsa USA YouTube channel and check out the videos if you're looking for something in particular. So we've got the video on plans versus wood here. We've got edge gluing sheet stock. We've got laminating. There's all kinds of videos that we put on here so that we can help you guys move along and be successful in your builds. The other thing I will point out is if you come up to the top and you hit that subscribe channel, make sure you hit the subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button. The bell button lets you know when we have new content available. And it's great to have one while we're doing these live series. And you can see right here, this number, 2.86 thousand subscribers. As soon as that number hits 3,000 subscribers, we're going to be giving away a quarter scale kit of the winner's choice. So make sure when you're going over there and you're checking the stuff out, that you do not forget to subscribe to the channel. The small electric, Tim is asking, while you guys are working on that, I'll answer him. Tim is asking, is the 1/6 scale DR1 recommended motor and ESC? I actually have my triplane sitting right over there on the bench, and I am running a Power 52 Castle 80 amp ESC and 4S Pulse 4220 pack, and it flies amazing on that setup. I went with a little bit bigger of a motor because I needed the nose weight. Now, what I will tell you is if you contact me, if you get that kit and you're going to build it, I don't recommend the setup that it is designed around. That plane was designed before I came on, and there's a slot in there that they show you where to put the batteries. I do not recommend that setup. It makes it way too tippy and way too top heavy. So I have mounted the battery under the motor. Again, if you check out the YouTube channel, I have a complete setup and video on the 6 scale triplane and how I've got it set up. And I am currently working on, because of that setup, people don't like that the battery is under the motor. It sticks out under the cowl. I'm working on a 3D printed Lerone radio cover that goes over that so you can't see the batteries when you put them in. Wes, these airplanes run from 5.5 to 6.5 pounds ready to fly at the 6 scale version. One of the things that Chuck pointed out the other day, once we were not on air any longer, is that the quarter scale Newport 17 and the 6 scale Newport 17 build almost exactly the same, which is really kind of nice. So if you build this one, you're comfortable with it, and you want to step up into a 6 or a quarter scale, you're going to recognize everything because it builds almost identically.
Almost just a little bit bigger. And so, and once again, our goal here is to have this thing, what we call on its feet, uncovered, in probably around 9 to 12 episodes. So, and once again, when I built my Newport 17 to quarter scale, I kind of started it as a winter project. Every year I try to start something on Thanksgiving afternoon. Once all the dishes are cleaned up and everybody's taking a nap, I clear the bench to start something new. I did my Newport 17, and 11 days later, it was ready for covering, which now I was like, great, now what am I going to do the rest of the winter? Well, I spent a little bit of time detailing it out. Ended up being a really nice airplane and a real great flyer. But as we have gone through this one, this is a very similar build. Like I said, just a little bit bigger. I'd probably jump up to a 3x6 foot card table, but that would be plenty to build that aircraft.
So Jim asked a question, will we be covering with fabric? I know I will be. I will actually be using the Balsa USA plane tech system and using the 3-step old school method of covering it. And I'm not sure. I think Chuck and Ronnie are going to cover an Ortex. Is that not correct?
That is correct. Yeah, we're going to be doing the Ortex on ours. And actually, I've been kind of half thinking about something else I was going to do, maybe in converting it to a 24 and then 24 bis, which is a little bit different version of Newport 17, just more on some stringers on the side, a little bit different power plant on the full scale. But, well, I'll let you guys know. I haven't quite decided yet. All right, jumping forward. Ronnie, are you caught up yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Taking my time.
I have.
Come on, Ronnie.
No worries. That's part of the hobby. I've got F2, I got F3, and I've got F4 in place. And just for giggles, I took one of my little easy clamps here and just drew the tail together, and everything fell right in place. So building straight on the center lines that we talked about, using the simple little tools we're doing, everything's falling right into place. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just start working my way backwards on adding the cross members and also adding the cross members to the, I guess would be the bottom of fuselage, but we're actually looking at the bottom is actually the top. So, but I'm going to go ahead and do that.
So one of the things I'm going to point out while Chuck's doing that is I'm going to bring up the live feed of the build that I already have here. And I'm going to show you kind of what Chuck's talking about. When you're setting this all up, you want to make sure that that tail is square. See there, I've got my tail in place and everything is completely square. So that's really going to be important to check. I know it's not the easiest to see, but this piece here is my tail piece. And obviously this is my square, and you can see that it is perfectly square. That's one of the things you're really going to want to make sure you check. One of the things that we didn't talk about was the center line. Right here is the center line for this airplane. When you get to the back, and I'm going to move my square out of the way so I can pan all the way down the fuselage here. When you get to the back, you want that to be right on that center line. See how those two pieces meet exactly over that center line? That's exactly what you're looking for when you're looking down on this model from above. I haven't put in my other cross members here yet because I wanted you guys to be able to see what's going on. I'll do those later, but that's what it's going to look like. Chuck right now has already glued in F4 and is working on gluing in F2 right now. Okay. Again, when you guys do these, you want to make sure that you're just going in and you're just tack gluing everything together. So that way, when you get there, you've got an opportunity. If something's not right and something's not quite square, you can still be able to fix it without having to cut the whole thing apart.
And one thing to mention with what Joe was talking about, the center line. Normally when I build, I actually use a laser or a level. So I can run that all the way down the plane, and I'll make a mark on the first former, and actually all the formers of the center of the former, and use a laser as a guide. So then I can tell that both the top and bottom of the fuselage is square.
Michael, I don't think that's possible with Ronnie's setup. Ronnie, he's asking if you can have your camera more straight on in the future. I don't think that's possible because there's a wall right in front of Ronnie's bench. So we'll try to provide the looks that you need from the other cameras. So whether it be from Chuck's or whether it be from my overhead setup, I can show you where they line up.
Okay, now I have on the plans, I have the longerons that are the cross formers that are going across, all tack glued in place. That's on the board, which is actually, we're building this fuselage upside down, obviously, so that would be considered the top. Those are all tack glued in place. The bottom is squared up, is not glued together yet. This is just held together with just one of these clamps. But the good news is when I drew those together, it felt right dead center in place. The fuselage is flat on the board. Everything looks good here. I'm just eyeing through. And so now the next step would be just to start adding in the rest of the cross members. And once those are in, and once again, still checking for trueness and squareness, I'll glue the tail post, just tack it glue together. At that point, the fuselage comes off the board. We check it for trueness just by eyesight, just the last double good look, and then start spot welding it all back together again and make it a secured tight airframe. So I'm going to start doing that. And Joe, what do we got next?
That's pretty much, we're just building right along. I will take a couple of the questions that we have on here. Steve Sochi, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. He's wanting to know, which quarter scale would you pick? So there are a lot to pick from. It really just depends on your taste in airframe. I will say this, having flown all of the quarter scales, there isn't one that flies bad. They all fly really good. If you want a very large quarter scale airframe, the DH4 is a beautiful flyer. It's actually a huge airplane. People don't believe that's a quarter scale, but it is. It's gigantic.
It is. And I got to fly Pete Goldsmith's this fall. We actually did it for the AMA fundraiser up at Fond du Lac, Joe.
Yep.
You were up there with us as well. And I think we flew that thing for 27 minutes or something on that Sato 36. That's what it was, yeah. And it was amazing. And like Joe said, and what's really neat about the Balsa USA's quarter scale aircraft is you want the touch and go. You want the evening flyer, gentle lady kind of thing where you're just shooting touch and goes and lazy eights and stuff like that. Look at a Sopwith Pup. Look at a Newport 17, the Newport 11. If you want something a little bit more of a fighter or gunfighter, look at that SPAD. Look at the D7, and even look at the Newport 28. All great models. And that's the beauty about model airplanes. That's the part I love about it, is every airplane has its different flying characteristics. Why they all fly great, obviously, but each one just does something a little bit different than the other one, and that's where I fall in love with the hobby.
Yeah, the DH4, you can't go wrong with it. Nor really, honestly, you can't really go wrong with any of the quarter scales. I actually have on hand the SPAD. Our SPAD, we figured, Chuck, we did some math. Me and Mark and the gang did some math. Not this year at Fond du Lac, but the year before. We think that SPAD has like 20 to 25,000 flights on it. It's been around for a long time. And
well, I was with you guys when you debuted it at Delaware that year, and what an awesome airplane. The really SPAD, that's more like a Thunderbolt of World War I, a P-47. Yeah. It's a straight wing. It's a big honking beefy airplane, and she grooves nicely. She'll fly a little bit better in the wind. So if you're one of those guys that in your area that's a little bit more windy than some other areas, like us inland guys, or Midwest guys, we have some nice calm nights. The guys near a lot of water tends to have more breeze. That SPAD flies in the wind.
Yeah, actually, go ahead, Ronnie.
I was gonna say, one thing I'd say is my second build ever was a Balsa USA quarter scale D7.
Oh, awesome.
Yep. That thing flies great. Still flies on a RCGF 32, I think is what I have in there. Right.
So we've got several. I mean, if you like the sport airplanes, we've got the EAA Bipe, the Satabia Aerobatic Pro. Of course, got the Cub, the Pup, the Newport 11. You know, we've got a whole list of things. Here is the SPAD that Chuck was talking about. It's a great flying airplane. I've flown the snot out of that exact airplane right there. Jerry Arias says that the quarter scale triplane flies very good. It really does. It is a triplane. Just be aware of that.
Yes.
It flies really good. I believe, Chuck, is that your airplane?
That one, no, that one's not mine, but I do have a third scale triplane, which is actually featured, I think, about 2 or 3 ads ago, which is, I think the theme of the ad was enjoying moments like this or something like that. But it's my third scale. But on my third scale triplane, I ended up doing a reduction drive. So I'm swinging a scale size propeller, so a third scale size propeller to the triplane, and it's pitched from 10. I'm flying in that RPM range that the full scale flew in. And well, I tell you what, the World War I guys, those guys were studs. I'm flying aircraft. My triplane, I love shooting touch and goes in the morning dawn with it. But adding that reduction drive, adding that next gyro factor that these full scale guys flew with, it's fun. It's exciting and keeps you on your toes.
Yes, it does. They are a ball to fly. Rusty, to answer your question, yes, there is a third scale SPAD in development. It's quite far along at this point, just to let you know. Yes, David, I will be doing a covering demo on mine. We won't be doing covering demos, I don't think, on all of these, but we will do any covering demos on these. So the plan for this build that we're doing now, so people can get through it, is we're going to build it all up in the bones and get it all framed in. And that's going to be the end of this series. And then we're going to do covering and engine placement and all that stuff in other videos as well. Jerry says his third scale triplane is powered by a Zenoa GT80 and it flies fantastic. I've witnessed that one in the air a lot.
Yeah,
it's a great
absolutely.
airplane.
All right, guys, just to catch you up, I've got all my bulkheads in place, all my cross members in place. She's all tack glued together, and I'm going to let it set for a little bit before I pop it off the board. And then once I get it off the board, I'll true it up. I'll just make sure she's all square, and if I'm happy, then I'll go through and I'll re-glue every joint. If I see something, which I can't see right now, based on everything here, it's flat on the board. All my lines are square. My squares are telling me that it's square, so I'm really not expecting any surprises. Like I said, I'll glue it together. Now, say for example, I did build a twist in it somewhere, put it back on the board, reline it up, take a straight edge razor blade and pop some of those joints loose, and reline it back up. That's the beauty of balsa. It's not a big deal. It's not a failure point. I've done it many times. So that's my little quick tip on that. So, but I'm gonna let mine sit for a little bit and catch up, see where Ronnie's at. How you doing, bud?
I just finished tacking down all my bulkheads, so now I'm moving on to the stringers in the back.
Okay.
So now we're just going to sit here and be really quiet, and we're going to
watch Ronnie build.
Watch Ronnie
I got
knock
my
the squares
popcorn.
over.
I'm sitting back watching.
We're just going to sit and watch Ronnie build. Everybody breathe real heavy in your mics while he's doing this.
In the same room, same building board that I've built quite a few planes on actually in the past couple of years.
We have to use our golf voices now. Here's Ronnie. He's putting in some pins.
Look at the placement of that pin, Joe.
Look at the placement of that pin. He is right next to that.
He gauged that offset and he laid it right in there.
He was almost in that hazard, but he was able to avoid it.
Nice save.
That's what they say on my land.
All right, we got to stop that, Joe. That was too fun.
Yeah. So that's pretty much where I'm at. I did the overhead view while Chuck was talking about him. The only thing I have left to do is put my lower stringers in, cross beams, and I'm going to catch that up for the next episode. We're coming on at about 52 minutes, so I think that's going to do it pretty close for tonight. The next episode will be episode 4, and we're going to install the firewall, and we're going to go on from there. I'm going to check real quick to see if there's any questions that we're going to need to be answered. RC Stinger says, does the thickness of the fuselage differs to the thickness of the wings, and will that cause drag? Just asking. So I guess that question to me is the thickness of the wood, I guess, is what you're asking. There's a bit of a difference between the thickness of the wing and the thickness of the fuselage. They are airfoil wings, so they do create a lot of lift, and you have 2 of them on this airplane, so it creates almost twice as much lift. I'm not really sure.
And World War I airplanes are draggy airplanes to begin with.
Oh, yes. And that's one of the really cool things. I'm glad I was just getting ready to say that. So I think it was Scott that asked earlier about a quarter scale kit. That's one of the things that's really, really cool about that DH4. It's the same thing as it is with the Big Jenny that you can see fly at Rhinebeck. If you've never had an opportunity to make it out to Rhinebeck, you must go. They've got a full scale Curtis Jenny. And when they fly it by, he'll lower the throttle so you can hear the wires whistle. And the DH4, Peter's DH4 that he flew at Fond du Lac, if he dials it down a little bit, you can actually hear a little bit of that whistle. It's really cool.
It is. It's an amazing flying airplane. It's well built, well set up, properly powered, not overpowered by any stretch, but also not underpowered. Just swinging the right prop, and just a great flying airplane. And that's something I want to come back to, like on the manuals, on the kits, and what makes the Balsa USA kits so fantastic is the time and an effort is to put in the manual. If anybody in your college classes had to write a course on draw a set of instructions or write a set of instructions, I'm sorry, for someone to tie your shoes. Just that simple step that we do every day, okay? Well, to do the manual, to create an airplane, to do the manual, to take the photos, to put it all in place to get a flying aircraft at the end, it's pretty amazing. So, and that's one thing that Balsa USA does so well. Their team does such a great job on preparing the manual, giving you the tips, giving you the tricks on how to be successful, the right glues, all the tools, all the suggested tools to be successful on your model airplane. Like Ronnie said, the second airplane he'd ever built was a Balsa USA core scale D7, still flying to this day. He test flew it. Nobody test flew it for him. There was a great support team around him that helped him. But still, he built it, he covered it, he test flew it, still flying today. So that just shows you how good the instructions are, the design of the aircraft, the quality of the product. It's just fantastic. So, and they say the proof's in the pudding, and I'm saying the proof's in Ronnie and his building and flying.
Yeah, and Jerry wanted to point out that everything we do is done in the U.S. That is why we are known as Balsa USA. It's all made in the U.S. Yeah. Now, I do have a question on here I wanted to point out. Gary asked, will that fly well on an OS Max 62 four-stroke? I will say it will fly good on that. That's going to give you some nose weight, which is a good thing for this. But that is a lot of engine in this airplane.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot of engine. So if you're going to put that engine in it, that's good. I believe it will all fit. I've not measured it, but I'm pretty sure that's not much bigger than the standard size 46FX. But I don't think you'll have to make any special arrangements with the cowl or anything. I think it'll all work.
Did you say four-stroke?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's a 62 four-stroke. It's about a 50 two-stroke.
Yeah, and that's something that's going to swing somewhere around a 13-inch prop.
Yeah.
I'm looking right now in our electric setup. We're going to be swinging somewhere between 11 and 12-inch prop. I'm guessing, Joe.
Yeah,
that's kind of where we're going to be at. So, granted, that four-stroke's a little bit lower RPM, so the P factor is going to be a little bit higher on the four-stroke, meaning that tail swing. But the overall RPMs will sit a little bit lower in the power curve. So, if propped right, that might be a decent combination.
Yeah. It should fly it well, but you're going to want to use throttle control because that's a lot of in that airplane.
You have to understand, too, that the full-scale Newport 17 with that bottom, that's a sequential wing, which is what I think is that the half wing. Is that kind of the terminology, Joe?
It's about a half wing.
The full-scale pilots blew the wing off that, too. So just be that in the mindset. The full-scale tended to shed its lower wing as well.
Yep, just be careful with that. All right, guys. So we are going to be back on Thursday night, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to swing over to balsausa.com and grab your very own Newport 16 or your 1/6 scale Newport 17 and use coupon code N17 Build. All caps, no spaces, to get 10% off that kit for the length of this build series. And don't forget to pick up, if you're going to do electric, pick up that 1/6 scale electric conversion kit, your guns and wheels and decals and all that stuff, and you will be ready to go. All these videos are going to be living over on the YouTube channel. I made a special playlist for them, so they're setting off by themselves. Shop time, Newport 17 build along video is the playlist. If you fall behind or you haven't gotten your kit yet and you want to catch up, you can get caught up. Right now, we're probably, for average builder, new to advanced, you're probably looking at about 3 hours total building with the time to set up and the building. So it'd be easy to catch up on an afternoon between builds and be caught up with us and ready to go on the next episode. So keep in mind, this series is going to run Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Saturdays from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Stay tuned for the next episode, which will air this Thursday, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Don't forget to check out the AMA podcast tomorrow, live podcast. They're having some guests on, and me, Joe, is going to be making a special appearance on that show, talking about things we've got going on. So make sure you give the AMA their support and check them out. If you need anything, just give us a shout. I want to thank the guys for building along with us and for being here and spending the time. And I want to thank, of course, all of our live viewers for showing up. If it wasn't for you guys, we couldn't do what we do. Thank you very much. So once again, thank you very much for watching.
See you
Happy
guys.
building.
See ya.